course. And then we are going to, obviously record all these sessions so that if you miss one, you can back and download that for a later time to view it. Our audio is dependent on how you join. So we have muted all the lines either way. But if you join through your computer speakers, you can stay that way. Or if you prefer to join through your phone speakers, you can do that by going to the mute icon on the bottom left side of your screen and click on the up arrow. And you'll see on the slide it says switch to phone audio. So you just click on that and it'll prompt you as to what to do to get connected. And then you just want to make sure your mute button and stuff on there, but you're likely to be muted, so that shouldn't be a problem. And then you can always switch back and forth if need be. Okay, so a little bit about your Zoom screen. You can adjust your view. You'll see at the bottom of your screen some different options. You have the built participant list. You can click on the Q&A box, and this is where you'll click if you want to ask a question during the webinar. We are going to be answering them throughout the webinar by just typing back the answers. And then we will be having time at the end to ask our presenter some of those questions live. So we'll be picking those questions out, the ones that aren't answered, and ask them live, and you'll get a chance to hear those at that time. We have closed captioning available, so if you need closed captioning, click on the icon that says Live Transcript, or CC, and you'll see there it says Show Subtitle, and you click on that, all set with the closed captioning. The chat feature, you'll notice, is not enabled for participants to chat into us. We will be chatting things to you throughout the webinar, different links that may be important. We are going to open the chat for a couple of activities. When that time comes, if it doesn't pop up on your screen, you may have to just click on that chat icon so that you can type in whatever it is that we're asking you to type in. The other thing, if your slides are already taking up your full screen and you can't see some of those features I just talked about, you can definitely click the view icon, and you have the option to screen or go back into full screen, either way. If you're in full screen, you can also hit escape, and that'll take you out as well. Okay, so we've seen that you keep an eye out for these in your email. If this is your first webinar for this workshop series, then for all evaluation the first time that you attend, and you'll also be getting session evaluations for each session that you attend. So if you could just complete those when you see them, they are going to be emailed to you from cms@sesservices.com, and the email will come toward the end of the session each day. So just be on the lookout. And we do really rely, since we base a lot of that feedback on some of the planning that goes into planning for next year's session, because we did look at last year's and tried to make some great changes for everyone for this year. Now, just to introduce who's on our workshop team today, we have my NTP colleague, Doria Diapogiannis. We also have our presenters today, Maureen Kerrigan, and who will be walking through all of this wonderful information. And just a reminder, the CMS National Training Program provides basic information on the Medicare, Medicaid, Children's Health Insurance Program, and Health Insurance Marketplace. You should always consult the relevant statutes, regulations, and rulings for official legal guidance. I also want to remind participants that this call is intended as an informational call for partners, is not intended for press purposes, and is not on the record. If you are a member of the press, please email our press office at press@cms.hhs.gov. Okay, so now we're going to get a chance to test out some of these tools I was talking about. So you'll see the chat pop up, and we'd like to know, where are you joining us from today? see, they come in fast, so I'll try to capture them. Maryland, Austin, Texas, Kansas, Seattle, Florida, New York, Montana, New Mexico, Arkansas, North Carolina, Missouri, Kansas. Excellent. I'm in Maryland, and I see that there's still many states I haven't mentioned. Puerto Rico have representation, it looks like, from everywhere in the country, so that's awesome. Thank you. Thank you again for joining us. Okay, so now we would like to know, are there specific points you're hoping to learn today? You want to type that into the chat. Okay, updates. How to sign someone up for Medicare Advantage, or Medicare Advantage, but I think Medigap. Community pricing, refresher for them, guaranteed issue. A lot of people want updates, want to know how to enroll, some general information, job related. People want basic information. So I think we'll have most of these things covered. Excellent. Okay. Thank you. All right. And now we're going to open up a poll, and we would like to know what your current knowledge level is on this topic. So do you find that you think you're an expert? Are you pretty knowledgeable? Are you average? Not much? Or nothing? Is this brand new to you? I'll give you a minute to think about where you fall and select the answer. There's not a wrong answer, so all right, let's see where we are here. Well, looks like we have a few experts on the call today. That's always terrific. We have a few that are here and it's brand new. We have not much. We have average and pretty knowledgeable. All those are in the middle, but we definitely have a lot of people that feel like they're average. So I know that we'll have all of you take away information today that will increase your knowledge level and make you feel a little bit more confident on this topic. So that's great. All right, so now I'm going to get ready and get into our presentation for today. And again, if you're here for Medicare Supplement Insurance Policies or Medigap, you're in the right place. All right, so here. There we go. So we have a lot to cover today. We have 4 lessons. We're going to introduce Medigap. We'll talk about the policies. We'll talk about how to buy a Medigap policy and Medigap rights and protections. We have a few scenarios that we'll walk through that are very helpful in finding information. And then we'll wrap things up with some key points and share some of the resources that are available to you and other Medicare products as well. Now, we have one of our word puzzles, as we like to call them, and we're going to pull up the chat so that we can see if you have an idea of what is this word puzzle? What is it saying to us? Okay. See what's coming in. Yep, looks like everyone is getting this Medigap, and that is great because that is why we're here. So thank you for entering that in. Okay. So now we're going to kick things off with Lesson 1, Introduction to Medicare Supplement Insurance or Medigap. And I am going to turn things over to Derek Leggett, who's going to walk us through this portion of the presentation. Go ahead, Derek.
Good afternoon or good morning, wherever you're tuning in from. Happy to be here and happy to talk about Medicare Supplement Insurance, which is the legal name for Medigap. This lesson is going to provide basic information about Medicare and Medicare Supplement Insurance policies, and it'll also discuss how Medigap works Medicare and what the policies actually cover. So, I know there's a very wide range of knowledge on the call today. We're going to spend some time just to make sure that everyone has the same foundation. And so that when we get into some of the more technical issues, everyone will be able to follow along. Next slide, please. So at the end of this lesson, we're expecting that you'll be able to explain what a Medigap policy is. Just what is it? Identify what Medicare Part A hospital insurance is, contrasted with Medicare Part B, which is medical insurance, which covers medically necessary services. And then we'll also talk more about the Part A and Part B amounts, meaning it's essentially just what the premium costs are, what's covered on a very high level so that you'll understand the significance of why a Medigap policy is important. Please look at the next slide, please. So, Medicare in general. So when you first enroll in Medicare, typically what happens is we will send you an IEP package or an initial enrollment period package. And when you get that package, if you're getting a Social Security benefit, you will be given multiple options. You can go with original Medicare, which is what the historical program has provided for beneficiaries, wherein you get Medicare Part A and Medicare Part B, and your claims will be paid on a fee-for-service basis. Or you can go with Medicare Advantage. We call Medicare Advantage Part C. Part C, however, is really a combination of both A and B, and we essentially deliver the services to you through a private entity that is contracted with Medicare. So, Medigap policies. Medigap policies essentially fill in the gaps that are covered by that are not covered by original Medicare. Things like your deductibles, co-insurance, co-payments, and these charges are covered by the Medicare program. So either you have to pay for them out of pocket, or you are working and you have an employer that fills in the gaps, or you can get what we call a Medigap for folks who do not have secondary insurance. Medigap is sold by private insurance companies, and they help to pay for some of those costs, again, like the co-payments and the co-insurance and deductibles. And the Medigap policies are also standardized. And in most states, they are named by letters. Plans A through F are the standardized letter numbers for plans in most states. And each standardized Medigap policy under the same plan letter must offer the same basic benefits. And it doesn't matter which insurance company sells it. The cost is typically the only difference between Medigap policies with the same plan letter sold by different insurance companies. For instance, if there's a Plan A, and Blue Cross and Blue Shield is selling Plan A in the state of Maryland, and Aetna is selling Plan A in the state of Maryland, and Cigna is selling Plan A in the state of Maryland, they are required by federal law to cover the exact same benefits. The only difference in those policies will, in fact, be the cost. If you have original Medicare and Medigap policy, Medicare is going to pay, again, its share of Medicare-approved amounts for covered health care costs. Then the Medigap policy will kick in, and it will pay its share based upon the type of Medigap policy that you've purchased. Medigap policies do not, however, cover your share of the cost under any other types of health insurance coverage, like Medicare Advantage plans. Medigap does not work with Medicare Advantage plans. It also does not cover any co-insurance or other costs associated with a prescription drug plan, or an employer union group health plan, or any other coverage like Medicaid or VA coverage or TRICARE. It is strictly for original Medicare beneficiaries who are enrolled in Parts A and B, and they are getting their services through the original Medicare program, which is the fee-for-service process, which is handled through a claims basis. It is so important to understand that Medigap policies do not work at all with Medicare Advantage. In fact, it's such a serious issue that we don't want folks anyone who is in Medicaid, there are very serious, strict monetary penalties levied against such individuals because the coverage is absolutely useless. One other point I'd like to make is that Medigap policies cover only one person. It is not a family plan. So if the husband and wife both want Medigap coverage, each of them have to purchase their own individual policy. And each individual also will have to pay their individual Part B premium. Next slide, please. So this slide's talking a little bit about those costs that we were talking about just a little while ago. And these amounts, additionally, they are actually updated yearly. And if you want the actual current amount, you can always go to Medicare.gov, the section on Medicare costs, and Medicare costs at a glance that display the actual costs for the current year. They change every year, every calendar year. So currently, after you pay the deductible amount of $1,556, there's no co-insurance for a hospital stay for the days 1 through 60. And then there's a $389 co-insurance per day for hospital days that span between 61st and the 90th day. And then so on and so on, $778 of co-insurance for each lifetime reserve day after the 90-day benefit period for up to 60 days over your lifetime. So these reserve days, they're simply days that are in reserve that once you go beyond this 91 days, you can use them up. And then once you get beyond that, Medicare will pay for all of your lifetime reserve days for all costs. The important thing is that as you're traveling through this period where you have co-insurances, it's very important that you have another form of insurance, secondary insurance, i.e. in this case, Medigap, to pick up those costs. Because, as you can see, if you want through 90 of a hospital day, $389 of co-insurance per day is pretty significant. And most of our beneficiaries find themselves on a fixed income. We also have an outlay of the mental health inpatient stays that are covered by Medicare. After an individual pays the deductible amount of $1,556, there is no co-insurance again for the first 60 days. Then the $389 kicks in for the co-insurance per day for the period of the 61st day through the 90th day, and then $778 for co-insurance for the lifetime reserve days after the 90 days for each benefit period. So you can really see how significant these costs can be to an individual that's on a fixed income, even someone who's working. If there's an expensive hospital stay, Medicare covers a lot, but then there's so much more that has to be covered. Next slide. This slide is talking more about some of the other services that Medicare provides, skilled nursing care, and home health care and hospice care. So there's $0 for home health services, but 20% of the Medicare approved amount for durable medical equipment for providers accepting assignment also has to be covered. Here's where your Medigap will come in and kick in and take care of some of those costs. Also, for hospice care, there's a $0 hospice care, up to $5 per prescription to manage pain and symptoms while at home. And then there's 5% of the Medicare approved amount for inpatient respite care. Medicare does not, however, cover room and board when you get a hospice care in your home or another facility where you live, like a nursing home. Also important to note that if a hospital gets blood from a blood bank at no charge, you won't have to pay for it or replace it. But if a hospital has to buy blood for you, you're going to have to pay for those hospital costs for the first 3 units of blood that you get in each calendar year. Or you can have the blood donated by you or someone else. Now you can see where all of these little costs that kick in, it's important. It's important to have a plan to have these covered, and this is where Medigap comes in. Next slide, please. This slide that talks about original Medicare. Basically, this is the Medicare program when it was started. This is the original Medicare program is the program that started Medicare way back in the 60s. And it's Part A, Part B, and this is talking a little bit about what you would pay for Part B. There's an annual Part B deductible of $233. And what that basically means is that before Medicare starts to pay for anything, each Medicare beneficiary is responsible under Part B to pay $233. And then there's a monthly premium of $170.10. It's the standard premium for Medicare beneficiaries. There are some Medicare beneficiaries that pay a little more, called income-related monthly adjustment amount. That is based upon an individual's income, and it's a sliding scale. But the basic Part B premium, again, is $170.10. But then there are also other costs that are associated with services received under Part B. These are the co-insurance and co-payments for Part B services. So yes, while Medicare kicks in and pays for most of the Medicaid-approved costs, there will be 20% co-insurances for most covered services like doctor's visits and some preventive care if the provider assign it. There is actually, in most cases, however, $0 for most preventive services. Our Medicare Review Handbook talks about those services ones have co-insurance costs and co-payment costs. There's also a 20% co-insurance for outpatient mental health services and co-payments for hospital outpatient services. You can see, again, here we have a good bit of coverage through the Medicare program that is covering 80% of the cost, but percent can add up pretty quickly. I'm going to stop here, and I think we have a now question.
Yes, we do. Thank you. Okay, so for our first knowledge check, we have a poll on the screen. We'd like to know if you join the Medicare Advantage plan, you can buy a Medigap policy to pay for out-of-pocket costs. Is that true or false? I'll give you a moment to select your answer. Okay. All right. Let's see how we did. We have a few trues. So we have about 12% true and 88% false. And the answer is false. The Medicare Advantage plans do not work with Medigap policies. So if you're in an MA plan, you can't use the Medigap policy to pay for those out-of-pocket costs. So, okay. Next one. Oh, well, okay. One Medigap policy can cover both you and your spouse, excuse me. Is that true or false? Okay, let's see how we did on this one. We have a couple of you with a true, and most of you got this correct. It is false. Each Medigap policy only covers one person, and Derek was just talking about that. And if you and your spouse would need to buy Medigap policies, you would each need to buy a separate policy. All right, so next, we're going to go with lesson 2, and I'll turn things back to Derek.
Sounds good. Thank you very much, Carrie. This particular lesson is going to talk more in detail about the Medicare supplemental insurance policies, the types of policies that are available. You'll recall from the first lesson that we talked about the 10 standardized Medigap policy types. These policies are standardized by federal statute, Section 1882 of the Social Security Act. Does not allow insurance companies to sell more than 10 different types of Medigap policies. Those policies are described with letters A. And again, it doesn't matter which insurance company sells those policies, they are standardized. So there's no trick with A and a chick with Cigna Plan A, they are obligated by federal statute to cover the exact same thing. The only thing that would be different in those plans would be the cost. But we'll talk about that a little bit more. Next slide, please. At the end of this session, we hope to be able to explain all the Medigap plan coverages and understand some of the recent Medigap changes, like the MAPRA of 2020, which changes who can get certain Medigap policies. And then we're also going to talk about the different types of Medigap plans. We'll also talk about waiver states. Waiver states, as we've mentioned before, there are 47 states that follow the 10 policy type schemata, but then we have some waiver states that already have a schemata for how they would sell Medigap policies, and they have been accepted as part of the federal statute to sell their plans the way that they like to sell them for those particular states. And then we'll also talk a little bit about Medigap select policy, special kind of Medigap policy, which is limited to networks. Next slide, please. So in most states, Medigap policies can only sell you a standardized Medigap policy. What that means is, again, we're talking about the governed by Section 1882 of the law, and those standard policies are described by the specific letter names that you see in this slide here. Identified by the letters that you see in the slide, A, B, C, D, F, G, A, L, M, and N. These are all the specific plans, each of which covers a standardized amount of coverage or provides for a certain amount of coverage for the beneficiary who selects that particular policy. Very much like any other insurance, the more comprehensive the coverage is, the more expensive it is. And then we also have high deductible plans and things like that, which we can talk about a little bit more. But it should just be noted for now, those are the 10 that are available. Plans E, H, I, and J were formerly available, but they were phased out because of new provisions in Medicare. For instance, the Medicare drug benefit eliminated the need for some of the plans that previously had drug coverage. So they're no longer sold, but there are some folks out there who still have them. They're just not available for sale for new Medicare beneficiaries. I would also note that plans C and F are no longer available to people who became new to Medicare on or after January 1st, 2020. Changes pursuant to MAPRA, the Medicare Access and Children's Health Reauthorization Act, and that requires that Medigap policy is no longer able to include coverage of the Part B deductible in coverage for beneficiary purposes. So Plan C and F covers the Part B deductible, and new Medicare beneficiaries are unable to purchase Plan C and F. They have the alternate plans, which are D and G, which are identical to Plan C and F, except for the fact that they don't cover the Part B deductible. And then about standardization in Massachusetts, Minnesota, and Wisconsin. Those states do not Medigap policies under the 10 plan schemata. They have their own schemata with similar coverages, but it's just they're not described as Plan A, Plan B, Plan C, D, or F through N. Instead, they have supplements, they have riders, they have a whole lot of different ways to the same types of coverage in the other 47 states. Next slide, please. So here you can see an array of types of coverages that each policy provides. As you look across the top of your screen, you'll see those 10 standardized plan policy types, A through N. You'll also see that there are some letters that are skipped. For instance, you'll see that there's no E there. E is no longer available for sale. H is no longer available for sale. We talked about those in the previous slide. But you can see as you go across the very top line, probably one of the most significant costs that beneficiaries do not want to have to incur by surprise would be the Part insurance. And co-insurance for somewhere between $389 and $700 a month. This is significant, and this is why people talk Medigap, because it fills in the gap that the program does not cover. And you also see if we drop down to the Part B co-insurance, these are for services that you would get if you went to a doctor or if you had durable medical. Those services are provided under Part B. So an office visit perhaps that would cost $100. Medicare would jump in and pay the $80, and then the $20 has to, or to be covered with a Medigap policy. And as we go down, you can see how the coverages begin to range. Some of them are 50%. Right? And when individuals go online, we have a Medigap Plan Finder. You can actually look at what the premium cost as you start to play with these numbers. More coverage, less coverage. So, of course, as we talked about previously in the other slide, cost of blood, the Part A hospice care co-insurance and co-payments, the skilled nursing facility care co-insurance, and the deductibles. All of these things add up at a certain point, and it's a very, very individual question. There's no right or wrong Medigap plan coverage to select. It's an extremely personal decision that an individual will make based upon the amount of risk that they can absorb, want to absorb. Basically, that's the decision, how much they can afford. Very much like auto insurance, if you get a very high deductible, your premiums will be low. If you have a low deductible, your premiums generally will be high. Next slide, please. So we talked a little bit about Medigap changes, and there's a myth from to the macro. An act passed by Congress in 2015 that became applicable to Medigap policies in 2020. And basically, that statute provides that Medigap plans sold to new people, people that Medicare, who get entitlement to Medicare on February 1st, 2020, they've been prohibited from selling those standardized policies. Again, there's policies C and F. And on the previous slide, you will notice that C and F actually covers the Part B deductible. Part B deductible is about $200 and some odd dollars every year now. Folks cannot buy, individuals cannot buy Plan C or F who are new to Medicare on or after January 1st. So, and also if an individual turns 65 on January 1st or later, they're also unable to purchase a Plan C or F. So there are some tricky parts of it sometimes folks get confused on. So you can have an individual, for instance, that is entitled to Medicare on January 1st, 2019. But they decide that they're still going to work and they still have their employer group health plan. That employer group health plan provides the wraparound coverage or coverage that a Medigap policy typically would. A person could work maybe another 5 years from 2019 until 2024 and then decide that they want a Medigap policy. They were, in fact, eligible for Medicare prior to January 1st, 2020. They are still able to purchase a Plan C or F. So that's where it gets a little tricky because it's all around the eligibility date and the age date. So as long as that person was 65 and or entitled to Medicare prior to January 1st, 2020, they are eligible to purchase a Plan C or Plan F, both of which cover the Part B deductible. Next slide. So insurance companies, again, can sell these Plan C or F to those getting Medicare retroactively. We talked about that a little while ago. And then Plan C and F will remain active for people who already have them. So it's not like you're going to lose it. You had it. Plan CNF, I would also mention, are probably the most popular Medigap plans because they have the most comprehensive coverage. CNF, under the statute, are guaranteed renewable unless the premiums are paid. All you have to do is make sure you're paying that premium on a regular basis, and the plans are guaranteed renewable. The insurance companies cannot drop you. And then there's also no federal guarantee issued right, for the transfer from Plan C or F to other plan types. So there's no federal protection or federal ruling that says if someone wants to leave Plan C or F and they want to go to say another plan like B or G, to allow them. However, nothing is prohibiting anyone from going out to the open market to any insurance company and saying, I'm interested in what you offer for a premium, for a plan B or G. I have a plan C or F. I'm interested in plan D or plan G or plan L. Insurance, they're individual private carriers. It's their prerogative whether or not they'd like to sell you a policy. In this particular circumstance, we'll be talking later about the open enrollment period where they really don't have a prerogative. They have to sell you a policy. Moving on to the next slide, please. So we talked about those waiver states. So again, there are 47 states that follow the plan policy type A through N. But then there are these three, Massachusetts, Minnesota, and Wisconsin, and they're called waiver states. And it basically means that they provide different types of Medigap policies that aren't labeled with letters. They do provide comparable benefits, though. It's just packaged differently. And then that core coverage and optional riders and things like that. But these plans are also subject to the network. In other words, just because they package it, mean that if you're in Massachusetts, Minnesota, or Wisconsin, that you will be able to get a plan that has coverage of the Part B deductible if you became eligible for Medicare after January 1st of 2020. The same rules apply here as they do for the other states using the Plan A through N standardized schema. Medicare Select is a different type of some states, not all states, and it requires the individual to use a network of hospitals and in some cases a network of doctors eligible for the full insurance benefits, except for emergencies. So in other words, you have to go to doctors that are in that. And if you don't, the particular rules for that select policy will govern whether or not you'll be reimbursed for those co-insurances, co-pays, and or deductibles. Each one of those is very specific, very individual. So if you decide to go with a select policy, you should be very careful about what they know their needs are and how they can manage their risk and what risks they're willing to absorb when they take a Medicare Select policy. The Medicare Select policies, and we'll say here in the slide in the point 2, can be offered as any of the standardized policies. In other words, what it's saying is that you could get a Medigap plan A, B, C, D, G, A, L, M, N, any of those plans packed limited to the network. That's the point we're making there. And generally, again, these are going to cost less than the other Medigap policies because you're restricted to a network. These are not the most popular at all amongst beneficiaries because typically seniors have developed relationships with their practitioners, and if their practitioners are not participating in that select network, they will not be interested in getting a Medicare Select policy. Next slide. This talks about some of the provisions that allow someone to, if they were to move, if they were to select a Medicare Select policy, no pun intended, moved out of their service area, protection for that person to be able to get another policy. They can buy a standardized Medigap policy from their current Medigap insurance company that offers the same or fewer benefits than their current one. So there are options. So if an individual were to move, they're not stuck. They have to have a policy that will provide coverage for the area to which they move. And so these are the guaranteed issuance rights that allow this individual out of that plan so that they can continue coverage in another plan. That's a statutory protection. It's very important because you can see how an individual had to move for whatever reason it was had to move, they would be left out without coverage. So that's Medicare Select, and I think that we have a knowledge question coming up now. Let's turn this over to Carrie.
Hey, great, and you'll see it's already up on your screen. So the question is, standardized Medigap plan identified by the same letter, A through N, must offer the same basic benefits no matter which insurance company sells it. Is that true or false? Give you a moment to select your answer. Hi. All right, so yes, it is true. Most of you got that right. And remember, as Derek was just saying, all of those standardized plans must offer the same basic benefits. The only difference is the cost. There's one more. Okay, this one is, what are the 3 waiver states? And Derek was just talking about those states and explaining that, but see if you remember which 3 states. Were Maryland, Maine, and Wyoming, Michigan, Montana, and Washington. Hey, let's see. 94% of you said Massachusetts, Minnesota, and Wisconsin. And a few of you answered the other options, and I know it can be slightly confusing, but most of you got it right. And remember, they provide all of Medigap policies, possibly not labeled with letters. They provide comparable benefits to standardized policies, and they have a different system that includes both basic and optional benefits. And next, we are going to go in. We've had a lot of information coming your way, but we are going to take that 10-minute break, give you a chance to stretch, stand up, and we'll be back in just a moment. And you'll see in a moment on your screen the break slide counting down for you so you're aware of how much time you have left on that break. We'll be back soon. Welcome back, everyone, from our break. We are going to enter into our last two lessons, lessons 3 and 4. I'm going to turn things over now to Maureen Kerrigan, who is going to kick things off.
Thank you so much, Carrie, and thank you, Derek. This is I just want us to thank you all for being here to keep up to date, abreast of what, because we always have changes. We don't like in Medigap, thankfully, but keeping yourself, whether you're brand new and you're just learning this for the first time, or you're here to keep refreshed and up to date. It's a commitment to our Medicare beneficiaries that we share with you, and really appreciate your commitment by being here. Also thank the training team, who is amazing at putting this together, and all the colleagues who help out with presenting or acting as experts, and in particular Derek. Derek went way beyond today. So, just by the way, so really appreciate that, Derek. It's really a lot of good information that this team has to get a lot of the expertise involved into and throughout the agency to be sure everything is up to date, current, thorough. It's quite a enormous task, and really appreciate having this information available for us to help you and to help us on staff to be aware of the different rules. So I am going to try to advance slides. There we go. So I'm going to do the next two lessons, and the first we're going to talk about Medigap costs, and then there's a lot of questions about the understanding the difference between the different Medigap plans, and costs really can be perhaps the biggest difference. Once you get past, you choose the benefit. The different when is the best time to buy a Medigap policy? There's very clearly a best time that we're going to explain, and explaining guaranteed issue rates. And that sort of provide a suggested sequence for literally walking through buying the policy. All right, Medigap pricing, the terminology used is rating, by the way, just that's what you run across if you're Googling about this, is there are three different ways that plans can be priced. And all three different ways may or may not be available in your state, but in this one in particular, may be less available, I think, but it's called community rating. That has got nothing to do with your age in terms of the price that the plan is going to be. It's going to be 65 or older. I also want to make the point here that we've been talking about the federal rules. I know the reality is that there can be differences from state to state. The federal rules are what you would call a minimum, a minimum requirement. And the states, where a state can act, is they can expand what is allowed, but they have to first meet the minimum requirement. So when we're talking about Medigap, we're talking about 65 or older. A state could have the ability to buy under 65, but we're just talking about 65. So this is one way that they can be priced, called community rating. The second way is called age-related. When it's actually issued to you, issue age-related. So the age when you buy it is what the price you're going to be paying for it is related to that. So you buy at 65, it's going to be different than if you buy it at 75. Easy explanation. And it doesn't automatically go up. When you bought it at 65, that price is going to stay as long as you have it. And the third kind is called attained age rated, which actually doesn't stay the same as you age. So when you buy it at 65, it's one price. The premium could be higher when you're 75. Those are the three different ways that plans can be rated. And then, of course, it's possible inflation may change the fact that you thought you had a set premium, or other factors that may end up raising the premium price. These are the basic three ways that plans are what's called graded. So we've teased a bit about what's the best time to buy a Medigap policy. And it is most definitely during your Medigap OEP, if that's your only option. That is what is called the open enrollment period. Two conditions to be in your Medigap OEP. You're both 65. Again, this isn't related to if you're getting Medicare based on a disability. This is when you have aged into Medicare at 65, this protection, and you're signed up for Part B. As Derek explained, you need to have A and B to get Medigap. But the actual open enrollment period for your Medigap is going to be when you have the B. And we'll talk about it's possible you've only gotten A, but the Medigap open enrollment period starts when you have the B. And it lasts for 6 months. So you have to have both those particular conditions to precipitate a Medigap open enrollment period. Again, here's one of those places where the state could add to that benefit. There are a few states that have a continuous open enrollment period, for example, about 6 months. There could be states that allow open enrollment for people besides those who are 65. They can add to what we require federally, but they can't take it away, but they can add to. And some states do have additional open enrollment periods. During your Medigap open enrollment period, again, 65, and sign up for Part B. It lasts for 6 months. That, again, is for 65. So if you're under 65 and you have Medicare because of a disability or ESRD, you won't necessarily have that ability to have that open enrollment period. But when you turn 65, you will get that opportunity. So what happens with the Medigap OEP? Why is it such a great time to possibly go ahead and get one? One is that they cannot refuse to sell you a policy. Two, they cannot charge more because of a present or past health problem. That's the terminology I'm sure you've heard called medical underwriting, where they are looking at your health status, making a decision based on that as to what the premium would be. They cannot do that during this open enrollment period. They also can't make you wait for coverage to start. So if you have a pre-existing condition before you start with your Medigap in the 6 months before, and you don't have any other creditable coverage, the Medigap plan can set aside and exclude covering those particular conditions or condition for 6 months. And obviously, you can see that could be a significant problem because you may be getting the policy because of the health condition, but it's not going to cover it for the first 6 months. Those have to be ones that you were treated or diagnosed. I mean, you literally saw a provider, and that shows the record that you have had this condition. And they can refuse to cover those costs. They will cover other things, but they can refuse to cover those costs of the pre-existing condition for up to 6 months. Unless you had 6 months continuous prior creditable coverage. So if you go right into Medicare and Medigap out of employment coverage or must coverage, this won't be an issue, but there also can be no break-in coverage for more than 63 days. So we talk about, there's only one exception to the possibility of getting a Part B late enrollment penalty. When you turn 65, and this is something that's happened a lot more in the last 5, 10 years, whatever, that people may continue to work past 65. They're eligible for Medicare at 65. Social Security may or may not be eligible. That age has moved out to be later, and maybe one reason why somebody's continuing to work. But the only exception to not getting a Part B late enrollment penalty, because you didn't sign up when you were first eligible, is if you have active group health coverage or, of your employment or your spouse's employment. So the backdrop there is, so you're sitting there, you may have signed up for Part A because you're 65 and you're working, but you don't really need anything else, but you're going to go ahead and get Part A because there's not a monthly premium. Also, if you want a Social Security check, you need to sign up for Part A. You may delay that too, but that's a package you need to do. But your Part B, you're saying, there's no reason for me to sign up for Part B because I have coverage with my group health coverage. And there is a monthly premium, and there's no reason for you to buy it. Well, one other thing we're bringing this in now is to make the point related to Medigap open enrollment period. The other thing is that Part B, enrollment in Part B is going to start your Medigap open enrollment period. And for 6 months, and you may not want that to, because you're working, you don't probably even need the Part B. You certainly don't need Medigap probably, so you don't want to get that started until to take advantage of it when you really want to take advantage of it. That's just a suggestion as it relates to the Medigap OEP, working it to your best benefit. So again, people will qualify for Medicare because of a disability or end-stage renal disease. You may not be able to buy a Medigap policy until you turn 65. In any case, really, throughout what we're talking about, a company can always sell your policy. What we're talking about is when they're required to. That doesn't mean that they couldn't sell you any other time, but there's perhaps no protections around things like medical underwriting, where you're going to be charged based on your health status. If you're under 65, they may be charging more. So that is just something to keep in mind and to be careful about. But if you got on Medicare because of ESOD or disability, when you turn 65, you're going to go ahead and get a Medigap open enrollment period, when you can go ahead and take advantage of the best protections related to buying a Medigap plan. So to summarize, we want to, these are the different variables that go into the different, how a Medigap plan is priced and how it could cost differently. Whether you're in a Medigap open enrollment period. As we talked about, that's when they can't do medical underwriting. They can't. They have to sell your plan. The cost is going to be different. Your age in some states. We talked about the different kinds of ways that states could possibly price them or rate them, is the term we use, age rated or not. So your age could affect the cost of your Medigap plan. Where you live could affect it. Rural versus urban could be different healthcare costs associated with your, so reflect that different healthcare cost. Smoking can also be a way that premiums are changed in terms of the cost. If you have a history of smoking or you're smoking currently. Which company is providing the plan? So we talked in that chart that Derek had of 10 different kinds of packages. Well, in any state, say there may be 3 companies selling one of those packages, and each company could be charging a different amount. They have to provide a specific required package, but they could be charging different amounts. One or more of the companies can also add a discount, offer a discount. If there's medical underwriting, that's going to, if you're not have any health conditions, then that could change the cost of the premium for you. And whether it's a Medicare Select policy, Derek explained those are the policies where there's a restriction on the providers that you're seeing. You can't see all providers, but it comes with a lower cost premium. So here is a very easy sequence to consider in terms of the steps to buy a Medigap policy. First, look at that chart and look at the chart to see which of the benefits do you want. It's intended to be able to compare apples to apples and oranges to oranges. So you look on the letters and you decide which of those standardized policies meets your needs. And then you find out which companies in your state are selling those policies. Call them up and find out more about it and compare your costs, and then you are ready to buy a Medigap policy. So the sequence is intended to suggest, you start with, what's your package you're looking for, and then you could, it's a way to very step-by-step go through choosing a Medigap policy. Now, what if you wanted to switch your Medigap policy? What if you got more than you needed, or you got less than you needed, or you got what you needed, but you want to change your insurance company? The insurance company isn't working for you. Or you got what you needed, but you think you might be able to find a policy that's less expensive. When can you do that? Well, you can only do that in the federal law during a Medigap OEP, or if you have a guaranteed issue right. We're going to talk about those other guaranteed issue rights in a minute. Again, the state could possibly have additional rights where you can switch another time. That's what's the minimum required under the federal law. You do, though, have a 30-day free look period, which means you can go, you want to go check it out. You have to pay 2 premiums, but you can check it out for a month and then go back to your old Medigap plan if that didn't work, or drop the other one if the new one does. So it's time for checking your knowledge, Carrie.
All right, thanks, Maureen. So we have our next question, and it's coverage for a pre-existing condition can only be in a Medigap policy if the condition was treated or diagnosed within 6 months before the date the coverage starts under the Medigap policy. So is this true or false? And I'll give you a minute in case you need to reread that one.
Oh, I don't get to vote. Oh, no.
I think you know the answer.
I want to have us have good scores. So I want to vote on it.
Okay, let's see how we did. Looks like there's a little bit of debate here. I'll call it. So 67% of you said this was true, and 33% said false. And most of you did get it right. It is true. This is called a look-back period. So original Medicare will still cover the condition even if it doesn't cover the out-of-pocket cost. Okay. We have one more. Check your knowledge. And this one is, if you are 65 or older, your Medigap initial enrollment period, general enrollment period, or open enrollment period begins when you enroll in Part B, and it can't be changed or repeated. So make the choice. Is it IEP, GEP, or OEP? Okay. All right, let's see. So, some of you said initial enrollment period, 42%. A few of you said general enrollment period. And most of you, 54%, said open enrollment period. And that is the correct answer. Your Medigap open enrollment period lasts for 6 months minimum, but it could be longer in your state. So you just need to check with your state on that one. All right, and I will turn things back over to Maureen, who will take us through lesson 4 and talk about Medicare supplement insurance rights and protection.
Thank you so much. I do want to sort of look back to those questions. On the second question, there in Medigap there is only an OEP. That's kind of a trick question if that's me. IEP and GP is in Medicare, but there's only an open enrollment period in Medigap. And again, that's 65, and you're enrolled in Part B. The other one about the pre-existing conditions, I just want to, Carrie did a great job, but I just want to reiterate that because I think that's a really important point to make sure folks understand that. It will cover other things, but so for example, if you had a 2 months ago, you don't have any other coverage at all, and you go treated for a health condition, and then 2 months later you join a Medigap plan, you had no coverage at all. That's not could be excluded by the Medigap plan. That cost for that particular condition or conditions cover other things, but those particular ones could be excluded. If you're not in the protected time of like a Medigap open enrollment period. So this is important to understand, so I just thought I'd reiterate it. I hope that folks, it's a little more clear. All right, sorry. We're going to talk today about guaranteed issue rights, guaranteed renew, and policy suspension, and then some resources for you. So let's start with John in a Medicare Advantage plan. So a person with a Medicare Advantage plan has a Medigap guaranteed issue right, meaning that they get to get the plan. So we have in Medicare Advantage something called the trial right. When you are first eligible for Part A at 65 and you join the Medicare Advantage plan, you have a trial right to switch back to original Medicare and leave the Medicare Advantage plan, and could also then pick up a Medigap plan. All right, so what if John is in a Medicare Advantage plan that decides to leave Medicare? I was thinking about how this could possibly work. For example, say John turns 65 in July and joins Medicare and Medicare Advantage plan. But the following plan year, that plan is not going to be any more available. Is left the Medicare market. So, he needs to possibly find another Medicare Advantage plan, or if he wants to go back to original Medicare, he'd have a guaranteed issue right to get a Medigap plan to supplement that. Medicare Advantage plans also serve specific areas, and so they could decide that their certain area no longer is a viable option for them, and they stop giving care in this area. So there's an opportunity to go pick up original Medicare and Medicare Advantage, or Medicare Advantage plan, or pick up original Medicare and Medigap plan. Or he moves. So he lives in New England and he's got a Medicare Advantage plan that covers the New England area, and he moves to California that his Medicare Advantage plan is not servicing. So he could go back to original Medicare and pick up a Medigap plan, or he could pick up another Medicare Advantage plan. But the guaranteed issue right is the term we use to describe being able to pick up the Medigap plan. So, on the other hand, we have Mary, who's an original Medicare. When did she get a Medigap guaranteed issue right? Oh, I just lost the slide. Okay. I'm not able to advance this slide. Oh, here we go. Or she had group health coverage from an employer union, or spouse's employer union coverage, and it's ending. she has an opportunity to have a Medigap guaranteed issue right. Or she has Medicare Select policy, which again may be servicing a specific geographic area, and she moves out like a Medicare Advantage plan. She moves out of the area. She could have a guaranteed issue right to pick up a Medigap plan. Most policies purchased after 1992 are guaranteed renewable, which means that you can have as long as you want. Even if, there's a plan that, like we talked earlier, that's no longer available. The insurance company cannot drop you unless you stop paying your premium, you weren't truthful on the policy application, or they go out of business. They go bankrupt. Now, if you have both Medicare and Medicaid, and I know there were a lot of questions about Medicaid implications. Most of your health costs are covered in the chat. You generally can't buy a Medigap policy because it's really there's no reason for it. It's your costs are going to be covered from Medicaid. But on the other hand, if you already have a Medigap policy and now become eligible for Medicaid, you can suspend your Medigap policy for up to 2 years within 90 days of getting Medicaid. And then start it up again without going back through underwriting or waiting periods. So if you suspend your policy, that means you're not paying the premiums and you're not getting the benefits. You're not going to be paying the benefits. One reason you might not want to suspend if you are having trouble with finding doctors who don't accept Medicaid. Or I'm sorry, not if you're having trouble, if you're finding that doctors are not accepting Medicaid. Similarly, if you can suspend Medigap while you're enrolled in your group health plan. So thought about how that would work. Possibly, say you retired at 65, you took Medicare, got a Medigap policy, and then at 70 you decide, whoops, I need to go back to work. And I'm going to get group health coverage. So I want to suspend my Medigap. I don't need the Medigap right now. And you can do that and get it back at any time. You need to notify the insurer within 90 days, and there will not be the waiting period. So you get the advantages of getting it when you were saying the open enrollment period. You won't be losing that. All right, it's time to check knowledge again, Carrie.
Okay. Medigap policies issued after which year are guaranteed renewable? 2002, 1982, or 1992? I'll give you a minute. Okay. All right. So let's see. We have some of you who answered for each of the years, but the answer is what most of you thought, 1992. And after 1992, Medigap policies are guaranteed renewable. So insurance companies can't drop your coverage unless you stop paying the premiums, you weren't truthful on your application, or the insurance company goes bankrupt or insolvent, which I know we just had a slide on that. So good job, everyone. And now we have one of our word puzzles. So we'll bring over that chat, and I'd like to ask you if you can figure out what this word puzzle is telling us. All right. Most of you look like you're getting this right. And yes, it is co-payment. And as we've been learning a lot about the cost that Medigap covers, we've learned a little bit about co-payments as well. So great job. Now we're going to move into a scenario, and I'll turn things back over to Maureen, and she can go ahead and talk us through this scenario.
Thank you, Carrie. So these scenarios are really helpful to sort of flesh out what we've been talking about and what it looks like. In the first instance, we're going to talk about a situation where Ted is 64. So I hope the first thing you're thinking about, so he doesn't have a Medigap OEP because he is 64, not 65. But he got Medicare due to a disability. That's how he qualified for Medicare. And in his state, which isn't true in all states, he is able to buy a Medigap policy. So he did get a Medigap policy, even though he's under 65. And question is, what's going to change when Ted turns 65 next year? He's going to have a Medigap open enrollment period because he has met the second of those two conditions. He has turned 65. So in that time, he will probably be able to lower his Medigap premium because he's not going to have underwriting. He's going to be able to have a wider choice in Medigap policies. Sometimes when a state does allow selling Medigap policies to people under 65, it's only a few kinds of policies that can be sold. So he can go ahead and move into a possibly a plan that will cost him less and do better for him. He can't be refused a policy because of his disability or for any other reason, really. And he also can't be charged more because of his disability. He also won't have that pre-existing condition waiting period since he has had the continuous coverage for more than 6 months. He has had the pre-existing condition for more than 6 months, but he has had coverage also, so he won't have those excluded from coverage. Now, on the other hand, we have Sophie, who is 67, and she is retired and ended her employer's sponsored health coverage, and she got Medicare A and B. She's looking at buying a Medigap policy, and what should she think about? Well, first off, we would like her to consider doing it during her open enrollment period, which is 6 months and begins with her Part B effective date. The date that Part B effective date is the date when you actually legally can access the benefit. That's what is meant by the effective date, by the way. And the reason is because she has the guaranteed issue rights. Oops. Which means the companies have to sell our policy. All the pre-existing conditions must be covered, and they can't charge her more based on her health status. If she doesn't enroll in that 6 months, it's possible she won't even be able to buy a policy, or they could use medical underwriting to charge her more. So now we're just going to go through all the points throughout this session today, just to go do an overview, a reminder. First off, you have to have Part A and B to buy a Medigap policy. Medigap is covering Medicare gaps, so you have to have Medicare to have a Medigap policy. You're still going to pay a Part B premium, and then you would pay a monthly premium for Medigap. The best time to buy a policy is during your Medigap OEP Medigap policies are only covering one person. There's no such thing as a family Medigap plan. It's just one person. Each standardized policy offers the same basic benefit. So that chart, 10 different plans, will tell you what is offered in each of those different lettered plans. However, the cost can vary by plan and by company. In general, they're only going to cover those costs associated with Medicare covered services. So, an example would be a Part B preventive benefit that Medicare covers might be Medicare's covering 80% and you're paying 20%. So the Medigap could be paying that 20%. I am making a hypothetical here. This is not looking at paying your Part A deductible. It could be that you have for Medicare covered hospital stay. So that is tied a little to Medicare coverage too. They don't work with Medicare Advantage plans, and by that we mean that it's not going to step in to cover the costs for your Medicare Advantage plan coverage as it would for original Medicare. It doesn't coordinate like that. There are two kinds of plans that can no longer be sold to people who are newly eligible with Medicare turned 65 January 1st, 2020 or later, and have premium-free Part A as of that date. Those are plans C or F. Individuals can keep them, but they cannot get them new if they come in that category. Now, some resources for you. 1-800-MEDICARE is our toll-free line that is available all the federal holidays, major federal holidays, where staff can assist you with questions. We have our website. We have a comparison of Medigap policies on our website. We have programs. We work with programs in the states called CHIPS. There's probably CHIPS on this call, but I'm going to explain what that is. If you don't know what that is, they are people in the field that can provide assistance to Medicare beneficiaries with their insurance options. This is really, they're going to know not only about Medicare, but they're also going to know about the plans in your area, including the Medigap plans in your area. It's a free resource for you, for individuals to help people make coverage choices. This is the site of their contractor that you can go there and find the SHIP in your state. Most of them are going to be available throughout the state. There'll be some, they have staff and volunteers helping people throughout the state. You can start off with their name number and get assistance if you need it. National Association of Insurance Commissioners site is here because Medigap is primarily regulated by the Department of Insurance in your state. So they might have information about Medigap there. There'll certainly be a way to get to the Department of Insurance site if you don't know how to get there. Go through that NAIC site. A lot of departments of insurance might have Medigap guidance, as SHIP might have, which would tell you literally, and that would be updated yearly possibly, where it would tell you some specifics about what's available in your state. This is one of our publications that's terrific, called Choosing the Medigap Policy. It gets updated every year. If you don't know how to get our publications, one is you can view or download them at our website. But if you want multiple copies, you can order them from our warehouse, the product ordering site. And then this is a tip sheet about Medicare coverage outside the United States, because Medicare in general doesn't cover it outside the United States. One of the things a Medigap policy might do is add what's called a rider, adding an additional benefit to provide some coverage outside the United States, and that's explained in that tip sheet. Here's a comparison between Medigap and Medicare Advantage plans. Which is always a big question. And there's a good chart to explain for you the different guaranteed issue rights. This specific related to each guaranteed issue right. what is it that you're going to have the right to buy, the time period that you need to work with for this policy, for this employee information, and then just our favorite acronyms. So now we have a question. Carrie,
Yep.
you doing this?
Sure, yep.
Yeah.
And thank you. Thanks for all that great information and lots of great resources to remember to download or post if you need to in your work area. Definitely encourage that. But this last poll is asking your opinion about the content that was presented today on Medigap. We'd like to know from you is, do you think it was too basic, just right, or too advanced? So if you could take a minute, and of course there's no wrong answer here, and let us know. It'll help us. Okay, just another second there. Perfect. Looks like most of you thought it was just the right amount of information, so we're happy about that. And then, of course, there's a couple of you who thought too basic and too advanced, and we always try to make sure that we are, reaching the majority of you, but definitely we have trainings throughout the year that can, help you either if you're more advanced or maybe more basic. So stay on that listserv so you're staying informed. And then that we will move into our question and answer period. And I know I've been seeing the questions coming in throughout the webinar, and there's many still, as I'm speaking, coming in, I think. And so I'm going to go ahead and ask our presenters some of the questions. Let me just go through, and you can still go ahead and submit questions if you haven't done so already, and we'll try to get to as many as we can. And if for some reason we don't get to your question, just remember you can always email our training mailbox, which is training@cms.hhs.gov, and we'll try to get that in the chat for you. But it's also on the last slide of this deck. If you get it downloaded, you'll see it there. Okay. The first question from Maureen is, if you have a Medicare savings program, does it act as a Medigap and you don't have to buy one?
Yes, it's possible. This is a kind of the specifics, that somebody would want to look at their specific needs. But yes, I mean, the other thing is and this is something that I think is another question that Derek was going to help with, is I am not sure that if you have Medicaid, you cannot buy a Medigap policy. I don't know if that is included in a Medicare savings program, which is actually a Medicaid program. And so the question may be if you can't even buy one. I'm not sure. Derek, do you know that?
Yeah, Maureen, this provision comes out of Section 1882 of the Social Security Act, and it's called anti-duplication. It's an which disallows or prevents, makes it unlawful for an agent or broker to sell a Medigap policy to anyone who has benefits that duplicate Medicare. Medicaid is specifically mentioned in the statute because it duplicates Medicare. What happens in the case of Medicaid is typically the providers are accepting Medicare assignments, and then the providers have to accept the portion of coinsurance that the Medicaid agency provides. They can't come back and say they're going to charge more and make the beneficiary liable. My understanding is that for instance, if there were a outpatient visit with $100 and Medicare paid the $80, if the Medicaid program paid $10 towards the coinsurance, which would have been the residual, which is $20, my understanding that the individual that's on Medicaid is not required to pay the other 10. My understanding also there's no balance billing. So, does it take the place of Medigap? In most cases, yes, because essentially there's no additional liability on the part of the beneficiary. This question also someone asked in the chat about Quimby. Quimby, which is a form of the Medicare Savings Program, they typically go further than the other MSPs. They cover, like in enrolled Medicare Part A and Part B cost sharing, for example, deductibles and co-insurance and co-pays. And that is clearly a duplication of what a Medigap policy would provide. So in that case, it would be duplicative, and I believe that the agent and or insurance company selling to such an individual knowingly would be in violation of the anti-duplication statute and subject to penalties. There was another question that came in through the chat that asked who would be responsible for enforcement of that. Typically what happens with Medigap policies is that state agencies are the primary enforcement and oversight entity for carriers selling insurance to beneficiaries in their state. Beneficiaries can go to their DOI, State Department of Insurance, file complaints, and the State Department of Insurance will probably work with the Secretary of HHS and or the OIG to levy those penalties, but the state is, I'm not sure exactly how it works, but the state is the primary enforcement and oversight entity as the state, generally speaking in all cases, license the agents that are selling private insurance.
Okay. Thank you for the explanation there. Appreciate it. Anything more on that, Maureen, or ready for the next question? I think you're on mute.
Right. No. What I didn't know for sure was that if you're fully qualified for Medicaid, that's one. These Medicare savings programs or Medicaid programs paying for Medicare costs. So that's he explained that. So thank you. Nothing to add.
All right. The next question is for you, Derek. Can someone on Medicaid purchase a Medigap if they have a spend down? Should they qualify for Medicaid? And can the cost of Medigap be used as part of that spend down? Derek, if you're talking, I think you're on mute.
I was talking, and I was talking to myself. I am now muted. I'm sorry. So, yes, I believe, I'm not totally sure, but I believe that an individual, prior to becoming eligible for Medicaid, can have a Medigap policy. And as a part of the spend down expenses, and this may vary from state to state, the cost of the premium for that Medigap policy can be included as a part of what they're considering spending down to get them to the eligibility requirements for Medicaid. I am not a Medicaid specialist, though, and I know that sometimes the rules change from state to state, but I believe that, well, in this case, the person should talk with their Department of Insurance to confirm how the cost of a Medigap premium are counted towards spend down.
Great. Moving on to the next question. Maureen, how does a Medigap plan compare to a Medicare Advantage plan in terms of hospitalization coverage? Which is more affordable when you're actually hospitalized?
That's I couldn't answer that specifically, but I would say that it's really kind of a different thing. Medigap is going to cover the costs related to, it's not adding coverage, it's not literally its own coverage, it's adding to, by, say you have a Medicare A deductible for your hospital stay, is over $1,000, I think, and so it could be paying some of that or all of that, but it's not gonna, it'll pay the gaps in the coverage. So it's really kind of different. It's kind of not. I feel it's a little bit comparing apples and oranges to try to make the comparison.
Maureen, I think it would be, I think in this case, they are apples and oranges. Medigap covers the co-insurance deductibles and co-payments under original Medicare, and I think that the individual recognizes that. I think that when you're making a decision, it's extremely individual for this person who asked this question. You would have to look at the explanation of coverage, we call it EOC, that the Medicare Advantage plan provides for that specific plan that you are considering purchasing. In other words, typically what will happen is they'll have an explanation of what they cover, how many days. And if you know that you have a specific pre-existing condition and you're thinking about maybe using a Medicare Advantage plan because the plan is cheaper when you compare the plan premium, which could be anything from $0 to whatever the plan charges on a monthly basis, compare that with the cost of purchasing a Medigap policy. If you have a specific condition and you look at the coverages under that Medicare Advantage plan, for instance, they can say, oh, you're going to need physical therapy. You are limited to no more than 15 visits. If you can't have more than 15 visits, and then the plan no longer covers it. The coverages can be different from Medicare as long as you pay the copay. So it's very, very individual. One, I would encourage you to look at the explanation of coverages that the Medicare Advantage organization is required to provide prior to you purchasing the plan. Look at your specific conditions and consider whether or not that plan will give you the flexibility and or coverage that you desire, or if you need flexibility because you like different providers. You may also be leaning more strongly towards original Medicare in order to have that flexibility for providers, for hospitals. Sometimes Medicare Advantage plans don't participate with certain hospitals. And if you know you have a specific condition and the hospital in your state or city specializes in that and your Medicare Advantage organization does not have coverage in that hospital, you would strongly want to consider original Medicare instead. So there are access questions and then there are also cost questions that go into that individualized decision. I hope that's helpful.
Yes, thank you so much. All right. Derek, can you explain lifetime reserve, please?
Lifetime reserve. Yeah, we talked about that earlier today, and I can see how that could be confusing. And I could have said something that could have caused some confusion. But lifetime reserve days, there are a total of 60 of them over your lifetime. And lifetime reserve days kick in at the after date 91 and beyond. There is when we're talking about hospital inpatient stays, day 91 and beyond, co-insurance is $778 for each lifetime reserve day. So if you're in your 91st day, the co-insurance is going to be $778 per day up to 60 days over your lifetime. So if you're hospitalized 1 year and you're in day 91 and you go to day 101, you would have used up 10 of your 60 days total of your lifetime reserve days. And you'll be responsible during those lifetime reserve days to pay that $778 in co-insurance. A Medigap policy will cover that $778 in co-insurance. And then when it comes to after you've exhausted, let's say you've gone to the hospital 5 times and each time you spent 10 days beyond the 90, let's say 6 times, and that way you would have used all 60 days of your lifetime reserve days. Then the Medigap policy according to the policy provisions, will pay for all of your costs. And this means that Medicare is no longer paid. And so these Medigap policies will kick in. This is a very rare situation when someone's in a hospital, but it does happen. And what's happened at this point is that when all of those lifetime reserve dates have been exhausted, Medicare is no longer paid. But the Medigap policy will come in and kick in and pay all of the costs. You can imagine how this can be very controversial with folks who are on life support and Medigap insurance companies covering all of the costs while that person's on life support, and the question as to whether or not that person should, the plug should be pulled or that person should remain on life support, and the likelihood of recovery, it becomes very controversial. Thankfully, it's very rare. I hope that's helpful.
Okay. All right. The next question is kind of what we were talking about before about when you can have a Medigap plan and when you can't. This one is talking about whether or not a person can have a Medigap if they are in a Medicare savings program. So if you could just clarify that, that would be great.
So, yeah, we talked about this a little while ago. The statute specifically says that it's prohibited for an agent or carrier to sell a policy to an individual who has coverage that duplicates the Medigap policy. So, for instance, when we talked about the Quimbies have coverage, a qualified Medicare beneficiary and Medicaid program, and they have Part A deductible coverage. It's covered. And many of the co-insurances are covered. What does that do? That duplicates what a Medigap policy would sell. And the impetus behind this is the elimination of the abuses of insurance companies. This was started all the way back in the early 90s when individuals were purchasing 5 and 6 quote-unquote Medigap policies because insurance agents were scaring folks and telling them, hey, what if this happens? Oh my gosh, you're not going to have enough. And what if that happens? You're not going to have enough. Individuals, there were seniors with 5 and 6 Medigap policies. And so the Omnibus Reconciliation Act of 1990 started this practice, triggered this practice from which anti-duplication came and said, no, it's unlawful for you to sell, it's illegal for you to sell Medigap to a person who has coverage that would duplicate the policy that you're selling. So it's really a beneficiary protection kind of thing. I think when it comes to the specific Medicare savings plans and what each state covers, maybe it could be argued that the Medicaid assistance is so minimal that it would not duplicate the sale of the Medigap policy. But I think that agents are going to be hard pressed to sell that because literally on most of the applications, there are affidavits and things that say, do you have any other coverage? Do you have this kind of coverage? So there's all kinds of things in the process that help to prevent duplicative coverage sales to individuals, whether it be through Medicaid or any other coverage that they would have. I hope that's helpful. It can be tricky, but I mean, Quimby clearly has significant coverage that would duplicate Medicare supplement or Medigap coverage.
Okay. Makes sense to me. Thank you. Okay, so this one's two parts. If someone wants to avoid underwriting in the future, is the best time to pick their Medigap during the first 6 months? And I'm assuming they're referring to their Medigap open enrollment period. And then the second part is, what if they move to another state? Do they keep that same plan, and how does that work?
I can take that. Yes, during the next OEP would be the best time. If they move out of it's guaranteed renewable, so you can continue if it's outside this, wherever, as long as you have. And I guess it's possible if the plan is not available where you move to, then you would be outside the service area and you would have an opportunity to buy something else.
And would there be underwriting at that point in time?
Okay, you moved out. Yeah, go ahead, please. Go ahead, Derek. Thanks.
Guaranteed issuance means that there will not be underwriting. And the issue is whether to have a federal guaranteed issuance rate at the federal level, which again, as Maureen mentioned earlier, are federal minimum standards that would allow you to, purchase a plan without underwriting or have guaranteed issuance. For instance, the federal provision requires that once you've attained the age of 65, you are entitled to Part A and you are enrolled in Part B. You will trigger that OEP. We talked about that earlier today. However, the state of New York says no, we have an open enrollment period every day of the year. We're not limiting it to the 6 months. We have open enrollment every day. There are some other states who extend it for a couple of months. So it's a very state-specific question respective to the OEP. Most states, however, do follow the federal minimum standard. There are cases, back to the situation if you move out of the service area, there are a number of organizations, for instance, some of the larger carriers like United, Aetna, they sell Medigap out in almost every state. If you move from California to Florida and you're going to be there for more than 6 months, they'll say, look, okay, it's time for you to get another plan in the area where you live. It's just very much like auto insurance. The rates for the auto insurance may differ if you move from one city to another area. The risks, the demographics, and whatever's in that area, they differ. However, if you have guaranteed issuance, you will still be guaranteed the best rate in the state to which you have moved permanently. Nowhere typically folks who are going from the north to the south temporarily, each year for a couple of months, they don't generally have to change. But if an insurance company notices that you have expensive services that are being provided in another state, they will probably call you on it. As long as you've been paying the premium timely, there will be an option for you to get another policy with guaranteed issuance somewhere else, wherever you move.
Okay, thank you. The next couple of questions are related. Some of the participants were confused a little bit about C and F and whether they were no longer available to those who turned 65 after January 1st or just to new people to Medicare. So you can clarify that, and then also while you're clarifying that, can a person who joined prior to January 1st, 2020 change to Plan C or F?
So the statutory provision is really kind of weird the way they wrote it. They describe an individual who is subject to not being able to purchase a Plan C or F as an individual that is newly eligible. And Congress, when they wrote this, for anyone who is 65 years, who attains the age of 65 or older on or after January 1st, or an individual who's entitled to Medicare on or after January 1st, 2020. So it's kind of like a twofold broom. But there could, however, be an individual who is entitled to Medicare prior to January 1st. That means they have escaped the macro broom, which would disallow them from purchasing a Plan C or F. This has been a very controversial provision and very confusing for a lot of people because they kind of feel like, well, what if I really want a C or F? The other thing that makes this really interesting is that the most challenging question with this is for the individual who can get a plan C or F, or they can get a plan D or G. C is identical to D, except that it covers the Part B deductible. F is identical to G, except that it provides coverage for the Part B deductible. G does not cover the Part B deductible, and Plan D, as in dog, does not cover the Part B deductible. So, generally speaking, one would hope or think that it's basically going to be the difference in cost of the annual deductible for Part B divided by 12. But sometimes the plans that even cover, that don't cover the Part B as in boy deductible, they're even cheaper. It's a very, very individualized decision. The other real key issue when it comes to making a decision to purchase a Plan C or a Plan D as opposed to a Plan F or a Plan G, or the individual that has a choice now, and that's only the individual who's entitled to Medicare prior to January 1st. The issue is that if you're dealing with a Plan C or F, those pools are closed. If you think about it from a insurance perspective, the insurance companies are no longer accepting the annual wage of 65-year-olds to purchase those policies. Even though Plan C and F are the most popular policies, they're closed to newly eligible Medicare beneficiaries. And so the question is, after 10 years, one has to consider that the average age in those plans is going to be, the youngest age of anyone in those plans is going to be 75. So the cost to stay in that pool of individuals is going to increase to be shared upon the residual beneficiaries. Unlike if you decide to just go ahead and put the money aside every year for your Part B deductible, doing a Plan B or G, those pools will be continuing to grow with newly eligible Medicare beneficiaries, and the cost for and the risk of the insurance company will be shared amongst a growing number of individuals who are eligible to purchase those policies. That is the real question that a lot of folks are struggling with when it comes to determining whether they want to get one of the older policies that does provide the coverage of the Part B deductible, or if they want to get one of the newer policies which does not. The newer policies have generally been trending cheaper than the older policies. I hope that's helpful. It's quite a mouthful understanding macro and the implications of macro.
Hey, thank you. Could one of you explain Medicare Select policy? They want to know, does it mean the Medigap policy? How does that impact the doctors and hospitals? Is that flipping the network? So if you could just speak to that point, that would be great.
It is confusing because it's called Medicare Select, but Medicare Select is a specific type of Medigap policy. So the confusion is because it's called Medicare Select, you think Medicare, that's government. But Medicare Select is it's private insurance, and it's a type of Medigap policy that is sold by just some insurers. Not all states provide for Medicare Select. Medicare Select is a version of Medigap. It is Medigap. Again, Medicare Select is Medigap. And it's a type of Medigap policy that has a restricted network. So the reimbursement, I think I saw a question in the chat that says, what do you mean if it's a Plan A, and it could be a normal Medigap policy, or it could be a Plan A Medicare Select Medigap policy. What that means is that the same coverages are provided, but you're restricted to getting reimbursement for those coverages to the network. as long as you're in the Medicare Select network, you go to the Medicare Select network of hospitals or the Medicare Select network of providers, you will get the 100% co-insurance and deductible that you would pay for Part A. But if you step out of the network and you get the services, yeah, Medicare will pay their 80%, but then you'll be responsible according to that specific Medicare Select policies provisions. They may not cover any of it, or maybe under certain special circumstances they will. I do believe that typically if it's an emergency situation and you don't have access to the network, then that plan will meet the exception and provide the coverage. But long and short of it, Medicare Select is Medigap restricted to a network.
Thank you. Okay, this next question is asking us to clarify if a person can still buy a Medigap, and I'll explain. A client has, this is the person asking, a client has a group health plan and is actively employed in a company with more than 20 employees. He got Part B a year ago. When he retires, there is not retiree insurance. He wants to get Medigap. Can he buy a Medigap and get guaranteed issue at retirement, or did he miss it because he already has Part B?
All right, I'm sorry. Can you try that again? It's a little
Oh,
complicated. Or unless you got it, Derek.
I want to ask, how old was the person when they purchased Part B?
This does not say.
So if the individual is, remember for the Medigap open enrollment period, it's triggered with entitlement to Part A, enrollment in Part B, and attaining the age of 65. The three of those things must converge to get to get the Medigap OEP, to trigger the Medigap open enrollment period. Now, if an individual is working for an employer, and that employer has employer group health coverage, one of the things the folks struggle with is, well, now I'm 65, do I need to get this Part B to get this Medigap? Well, if you have employer group health coverage, your employer group health coverage is serving as your secondary coverage. It'll wrap around your Medigap. It will coordinate with Medigap. It will usually, in most cases, kick in the 20% in other co-insurance and deductibles and costs that Medicare does not cover. For that reason, most people delay purchasing Part B if they are still working. And what happens is, and I know that gets folks kind of concerned about the late enrollment penalty for Part B. But there's a special election period for Part B where you don't have to enroll in Part B if you have employer group health coverage. And we call it an FEP. And what that allows you to do is it allows you to hold off on the Medigap OEP until you are ready. If you, in fact, do purchase, however, if you do enroll in Part B, you're 65 and entitled to Part A, you will miss your open enrollment period Medigap under the federal statute if you go beyond the 6 months. It triggers it. It opens it up, it triggers it, and it means that that's the only time that you'll be able to get guaranteed issuance into a Medigap policy. Unless you're in a state that provides expanded coverage beyond the federal minimum standard.
Okay. All right, great. Okay, let's move on to the next one. if a person has a Medicare Advantage plan, let me see if I can simplify this one. Hold on one second. Okay, so this has to do with having Medicare Advantage, and if they want to go back to traditional or original Medicare and Medigap, could they be refused Medigap? So there's some definitely missing information here, but I think what they're asking is clarification on what happens if you have original Medicare, then go to Medicare Advantage, and then want to go back to your original Medicare with Medigap, and will you get that Medigap back?
There are two GI provisions specifically related to moving in and out of Medicare Advantage. They're both in Section 1882 of the Social Security Act and in the NAIC model regulation. The first one is for an individual who, at the age of 65, they received their initial enrollment package, they decided they were going to go with Medicare Advantage out of the gate. So their first experience with Medicare will be with a Medicare Advantage plan. They did not have any association with Medigap or original Medicare. Again, they went straight to MA. Such an individual has a guaranteed issuance right that lasts for a period of 12 months. That person can touch, taste, try Medicare Advantage for 12 months. And if they get to the 11th month or any month prior to the 12th month and they say that Medicare Advantage is not for me, I don't like the restricted network, I don't like the limited coverages that this particular plan offers, that individual under the federal statute has a guaranteed issuance right. And again, it's in the form of a trial right, but a trial right also is guaranteed issuance. They were able to try Medicare Advantage at the age of 65 when they were first entitled to Medicare for a period of 12 months. If they decide, again, within that 12-month period that they do not want Medicare Advantage, they have the ability to purchase any Medigap plan sold in their state without underwriting. They have to do it within the 12-month period. And they have, it's just as if they started from the very beginning. Now you can have another individual in another case of a Medicare Advantage trial right. For instance, an individual could have started with original Medicare. Let's say someone started with original Medicare at the age of 65. And at the age of 70, they're in a senior home, and they're talking with some folks, and they're playing bridge, and someone's talking about this wonderful Medicare Advantage plan. And this individual who's in original Medicare at the age of 70, who decides they want to try Medicare Advantage for the first time, and let's back up a little bit. They were in original Medicare at age 65 with a Medigap policy. They turn 70, again, they're sitting with some other folks, and the other folks are talking about how wonderful this Medicare Advantage plan is. They decide to enroll in the Medicare Advantage plan in the open enrollment period. They also have 12 months to touch it, to taste it, to try it, to see if they like it. However, in this case, the federal statute does not allow them to go back and get any Medigap policy. The federal statute provides that they can go back to their former Medigap policy. So this is the individual. You have the one that when they first were entitled to Medicare and they try Medicare Advantage for the first 12 months. Within the first 12 months, they can go back and they can pick any Medigap policy sold in their state without guaranteed, without underwriting. And then the second trial right for Medicare Advantage is for the individual who is trying Medicare Advantage for the first time at any age. They can try it when they're 85 years old. And they can say, I've always thought about it. I want to try it. They get 12 months. But in that second case, they must go back to the, of course, original Medicare, but the policy that they had with the same insurer, and they will get it at the same price that they left it. Those are the two Medicare Advantage trial rights provided on the federal level. You can have additional
something so complicated. The next question has to do with counselors when they're working with beneficiaries and they are discussing the different letter plans, but the beneficiary is saying that the agents and brokers are only discussing and trying to sell Plan G, and some will discuss Plan N. So how or what can a counselor do, or how can we encourage agents and brokers to be open to other letter plans and sell them the letter of their choice? So any advice on that?
I think there are a couple of things. Unfortunately, I do think that in the private sector, sometimes there can be steering beneficiaries to plans that maybe perhaps provide a larger commission. But I think it's incumbent upon the Medicare beneficiary to do their research. We have a guide called Choosing a Medigap Policy Guide that outlines all 10 plans, and also specifically all 10 plans that are provided in 47 states, and then in the waiver state, the different types of plans and options that are available. It's totally up to the beneficiary to be to know what their needs are and what kind of coverage they want. Now, it could be that an agent or broker is working for a company that only sells certain policies. So I would encourage such an individual, the beneficiary, to use our Medigap Plan Finder tool, which is on Medicare.gov, where they can put in their zip code and they can learn of every Medigap carrier in their state that's selling the different types of policies that they want. They can also get an estimate of the premiums, what they would cost by using that website. But at the end of the day, once you find out that the policy is available by a specific carrier, call that carrier, find out specifically what it's going to cost for you, and then make your decision from there. This is private insurance. It's governed by federal statute. But again, the state has primary oversight over the insurance agents, carriers, and brokers. So they're the ones that have the influence to, make things fair or make things more transparent. But we, since all of these folks are under Medicare, we provide that service with the Medigap Plan Finder on our website to better inform the beneficiary of all the options that are available to them.
Okay, terrific. And I know we still have quite a few questions in our Q&A box. We're going to have time for just one or two more, and then we'll just ask if you could please email us at training@cms.hhs.gov if your question was not answered, and we'll be happy to get back to you. The next question is, why do Medigap insurance plans, not a bill statement, so the mailing that they send to you that says not a bill, indicate different amounts that Medicare will pay and list required medical services are not covered by Medicare?
Can you repeat that one more time?
Okay. So why do Medigap insurance plan statements that say not a bill indicate different amounts that Medicare will pay and list required medical services are not covered by Medicare?
I'm not sure I totally understand the question, but what I can say is this. The Medicare program has what's called a physician fee schedule, and it is for approved Medicare benefits. So Medigap will only pay if Medicare has paid. There's a process that most insurance companies, most Medigap insurance companies engage in called our Coordination of Benefits Administration. And basically what happens is once Medicare has paid, they have a link, an electronic link with the insurance company, and it basically says, for instance, Mrs. Jones in Idaho just had an office visit. We paid this much. And HIPAA requirements require the least amount of information to be shared with the Medicaid policy that they need in order to make their payment. And so basically happens is they notify the Medigap insurer electronically. This is Medicare. We just paid this for Mrs. Jones, Idaho. Here's your notice. You go ahead and pay whatever you're supposed to pay as a Medigap provider. So what could be an issue is that the Medigap provider could be saying that, look, if it's not a covered Medicare service, we're not paying for it. There is the exception of hospital inpatient stays that we talked about a little while ago for the individuals who've gone beyond the lifetime reserve days, and Medigap policy pays for that. Those are very rare. But generally speaking, on a fee-for-service basis, Medigap will only pay if Medicare has paid, and Medigap will only pay their portion of the co-insurance, co-payments, and their deductibles in accordance to the type of plan that the person has. You'll recall when you looked at the 10 plan types, that some of the reimbursements were made at 50%, some of them were made at 75%. By and large, they made it 100%. But that's why they introduced with the policy. They pay after Medicare paid for an approved Medicare service. I hope that's all.
Great. Thank you so much, Derek. And I'm just trying to be mindful of time. And I think we'll stop there with the questions, but I will ask you, Maureen and Derek, if you have any last thoughts or comments that you wanted to make in about like the next couple of minutes to wrap things up for today.
I don't.
Well, I enjoyed.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I enjoyed this. This is not very straightforward. You're dealing with an insurance product that complements Medicare, but only a part of Medicare, and that's the original Medicare. There's always the convergence of the federal statute, and then you have, even though it's governed by federal statute, you have this that have primary oversight and enforcement authority. So to the extent that you're dealing with a carrier issue or an insurer or a broker, those questions will always go to the State Department of Insurance. If there's specific statutory policy questions, those generally go to the State Department of Insurance as well, because each state adopts the federal provisions in order to sell policies in their state. So I think the first line, insofar as dealing with carriers and brokers and things, is typically the Department of Insurance. But I would also encourage, when you're dealing with individuals who are making purchases of policies, again, to use the Medigap Plan Finder that CMS has on our web pages. I'm sure that's included with the resources. But then also to work with the SHIP counselors, who can help you walk through and think through just an individual needs to be thinking about when you're thinking about purchasing one of these policies. It is extremely individual. Medigap isn't for one. Some folks who don't have specific needs or super healthy, sometimes they find that with the doctor efficiently, they may be able to save money with Medicare Advantage, and then others want the liberty to go to any Medicare provider, and so they opt for original Medicare. There's just so many things to think about, but the decision is extremely individualized. And at the open enrollment period, I would encourage folks to jump in and start their research early, because this is not a decision. The decision to go with original Medicare with Medigap versus joining a Medicare Advantage plan is not one to be made in 24 hours. It takes a good bit of time to make that decision, which is why we send the initial enrollment package 3 months prior to their 65th birthday, so that they can mull over it. So it's not simple, but I do encourage folks to use, particularly Medigap policy guide, CMS issues, and the Medigap airplane finder help coupled with helping with their ship.
And I would
Thank
say,
you so much.
I'm going to just go ahead and make the pitch for the ships, so to say, if you can get there before open enrollment period, because they get pretty darn busy, if you can try to sort some of that out beforehand. You only have 6 weeks for folks to make changes, and some of this, sort of the bigger picture, you can sort out before actually open enrollment time. The questions that Derek suggested, could be a more bigger question. So they're perfectly, as I said too, they're going to know about what's available locally. I know that we talked a lot of times about our state may have different extras in terms of the Medigap